when I first met Nelson Mandela. It was back then it was called the OAU, the Organization of African Unity. There was a summit in the Burkina Faso capital, Ouagadougou, and many heads of state were present on that day. We show up, we're filming, and we film them coming in, they do their thing, we call it, photo shoot. And then we politely ask Mandela's people, look, can we have a short interview? And they agree. It's a whole bunch of us, BBC, Reuters, APTN, every broadcaster who was there, they cram into his chalet. Mandela says a few things, OEU related, Africa related. And then he turns, any questions? The BBC guy is the first guy, Mark Dodd, I remember him. He asks the first question, Mandela answers him. And I'm standing in the presence of this man. And he looks at me and says, and I put my hand up, he says, yes, young man, in his voice. And I said, Mr. President, Jeff Koinange, Reuters Television, can I ask you a question? I said, did you say Koinange? And I said, yes, Mr. President. He says, and in front of everyone, he said, I remember a Koinange back in the days of our struggle. And I said, yes, Mr. President, that's my family growing up. And this is what he said, and I have to quote him. He says, you come from a long line of great leaders. I hope you realize how fortunate you are and that you carry with you a great deal of responsibility in what you do. And I looked at him right there. It's a press conference. It's full of journalists. And he's pointed out to me. Boom. Just like that, we struck a relationship. So I was based in West Africa then. After that, I was based in Johannesburg. So Pretoria was a regular beat. And Pretoria is where the president lives in South Africa. So every time Mandela would hold a press conference, boom, would be there. And of course, Mandela, he walks in the room, he controls the whole room, and he commands it at the same time. And every time he would see me, he say, the son of chiefs, how are you doing? And then he would, how's your wife? Any children yet? And people would break out laughing. And I said, no, Mr. President, still trying. He said, do you want some help? And that would have everybody cracking up. And then, of course, we're going to the press conference and continue. And that relationship continued back and forth, back and forth. Here's a great part of it. So this was about 97, before he retired, right? 10 years later, let's say 98. So 10 years later, my son has been born in 2007 and is about 8 months old. So it's early 2008. I'm in South Africa, getting ready to head back to Kenya, relocate. And I say, you know what? Mandela all this time has been asking about my son. What if I call his office and say, before we leave for Kenya, let's see if we can get an appointment. Of course, this time he had been deteriorating very much. And, he had been much retired, but the foundation was still running and running incredibly. So I called his office. I called Zelda Koinange, his longtime PA. And I said, Zelda, we're about to leave, relocate to Kenya. I have an 8-month-old boy. Is it possible just to spend 5 minutes with the man? Because he always asked whether we had a child. And Zelda said, I'll get back to you. Sure enough, she calls me back less than half an hour later and says, Jeff, be there at his office tomorrow morning, exactly at noon. We arrived there, 10 minutes to noon, or 15, maybe 20 minutes. We're early. And we're sitting there and we're saying, wow, this is a moment with the man. A moment I'm going to introduce my son to Nelson Mandela. 10 minutes later, his convoy rolls in. Right before noon, comes in. 2-car convoy. He's led into his office. And Zelda comes and says, look, Madiba will see you now. As we're getting up with my son, Jamal, he takes the biggest dump of his life. Right there. He's 8 months old. Takes a big crap. Boom. And I say, my God, what do we do now? What do we do? I said, there's no way I'm going to walk into Nelson Mandela's office with my son smelling of poop. Quickly, I grab him, I take him to the bathroom, wipe him down, put the diapers on, come back. It took all of 3 minutes. Must be a world record. There we are now, walk into Madiba's office with my son. Now, here's the deal. Madiba was used to meeting all kinds of people, kids, grown up, in between everything, infants. Most of all, and Zelda and her people were telling me this, 90% of the time, if a child or a stranger met Madiba, little kid, they'll be screaming. They'll be screaming, oh, I want my mommy, I want my, you know, they didn't know who this person, obviously, they didn't know who this person was. On that day, my son, Jamal, when I introduced him to Madiba, there's a picture. I hope we can show you this picture where he reaches his little finger and touches Madiba right there on the chin. It was like he was looking in awe at this man. 8 months old, by the way. And Madiba smiles. Oh, this is the son of chiefs. Oh, and you know, I'm telling you, it was a priceless moment. It was incredible. And Jamal never once flinched, never cried, he just stared at this man and pointed and touched his face, kept touching his face. I'm telling you, folks, we were supposed to have 10 minutes with the man. We ended up with him like 20 minutes, took all kinds of pictures, click, 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 click. Because I figured that was one moment. If there's any moment, that was it. God, Madiba. What a man. What a man.